Immigration detention is a very political and politicised issue. When I was conducting research in Yarlswood, that was in 2010, so it was some years ago. And for the most part, when I was in Yarlswood, conditions were actually good. It was a period of time when Yarlswood was going through quite a significant transformation, because it was as the child detention was coming to an end. So when I first began the research, there were some families with small children. By the time I finished the research, they had all left and been moved. And there was a lot of expertise at the time of working with women. Having said that, there were some of the issues which are now in the headlines. In particular, women complained then about guards coming in to check their rooms when they weren't always dressed, or if they were on the toilet, or if they were in the shower. And the women found that kind of behaviour very threatening. And I think one of the reasons why women found that behaviour very threatening was that women in Yarlswood, the ones that I spoke to at any rate, did seem to have a very high proportion of them had experienced significant sexual violence in their lives. And we see this in other institutions for women. This is also the case with women in prison. Women in prison also often find male officers very threatening. And it's very difficult for detention centres to know how to manage these issues. So when I was doing the research, I did talk to the staff, the senior staff, about whether they could run courses for survivors of domestic violence or for survivors of rape. And while they were interested in them, and they were aware that some courses like that existed and had been used successfully in prisons, they said it was very difficult to do in detention because they could never know how long the women would be there with them. So the absence of an upper limit to a period of time in detention has a knock-on effect on what you can do with helping vulnerable populations. I think there are two issues which really need to be dealt with in immigration detention. I think the most important thing that really needs to be grappled with is the absence of an upper limit to how long somebody can be detained for. I didn't meet anybody in detention, either detainees or staff at any level, and also not in the Home Office either, who supported an upper limit, who supported no upper limit to detention. Everybody I spoke to believed that there should be a statutory time limit on how long you could be detained, and most people suggested that it should only be 6 months. And so staff constantly suggested that if you had somebody in there for 6 months and you couldn't resolve their case, that they should then be released into the community in order for the case to be managed in that right way. I think if the UK could fall into line with other countries in the European Union and elsewhere in the world on this matter, if they could place an upper limit on detention, I think that that would profoundly change the experience of detention for the better. I think the other thing that needs to happen with immigration detention is that I think that the Home Office and the custodial companies need to be less anxious about letting in researchers and people from the community. There are many centres which are already doing a lot in both of those respects, and there is actually a lot of community engagement in some of these places. I think that by allowing in more research and more members of the community, then we can learn more about these places, more creative responses can come up, and I think also perhaps some of the heat of the political argument might be reduced by that if there was more engagement and more knowledge about what these places are like.